I'm Paul Carlos. Welcome to today's TDC's virtual salon. And joining me are Pragun Agarwal, our speaker today, and Carol Waller, our executive director. Just to make a few announcements, also give some people some time to log into Zoom. So every year we have a TDC competition, and this year is the TDC 67 competition. And what's the number for the type competition, Carol?
24.
In the TDC 24 type competition. It's the oldest, most prestigious design competition dedicated to typography. And you could see the entry forms and the rules on tdc.oneclub.org. Competition chairs Juan Carlos Pagan, Yujun Park, and Ksenia Samarskaya have assembled an amazing and diverse jury this year. And this year's jury can be found online as well, with the same address /jury. And also our competition juries will be giving talks in January. So watch out for our announcements for these events. So today's speaker, Pragun Agarwal, is attending all the way from Delhi in India, or outside of Delhi, I should say. I forgot the town or suburb. Pragun graduated from the MFA program at Maryland Institute College of Art, and he has interned at Pentagram and among other places. He's currently working at Landor in Hamburg, and since he's talking about personal work, he was recently married, and hence why he's currently in India. So welcome, Pragun Agarwal. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Paul. And again, thanks so much for the opportunity. And thanks a lot, Carol, as well, for helping out. And the video is working okay for you?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So yeah, hello, everyone. My name is Pragun Agarwal. And like Paul said, I'm come online from Gurgaon, which is actually the outskirts of Delhi in India. Yes, like you said, I came back to India from Hamburg. That's where I'm based out of. I'm working at Landor as a senior designer. And I came to India to get married this year. And I think managed to do it in the middle of these difficult circumstances for everyone. And I thought I'd spend a little more time here till things get better in Germany as well and go back. And yeah, I want to thank everyone, and I hope everyone's doing well. And thank you so much for signing in and listening to me. So yeah, the title of my talk is a curious one. It's Me, My Dad, and Typography. And like I was mentioning to Paul, it's not only about my work or my dad's work, and stuff like that, but it's actually about me and my dad's relationship from the lens of typography. And that's such an interesting thing, I feel. It's about a bunch of things. It's not just about looking at work or looking at projects, but it's about looking back in the past. It's looking back at experiences. It's looking back at journeys. More importantly, it's looking back at my childhood and his childhood and seeing what were the influences that drove us to where we both are today and our relationships through that. And it's also a lot to do about just our affinity towards letterforms and just our sort of passion towards letterforms. So I think it's not just about work, but it's about those relationships and journeys. And that's what I'm going to really talk about. So I'll start off with a small story. Like I told Paul, I'm from New Delhi. And I did my schooling. I was born and brought up in New Delhi. And, I remember this, day till today. And, Delhi has this 2 months of severe winter where it's super foggy. And it's like really, really cold, and the fog is dense, and the bus would come and go away. Sometimes you would miss it. And I remember this day because we ultimately sat on the bus, we reached school, and we went in our classes. And, 45 of us used to be in one class. And the teacher asked us, we were supposed to carry our fee checks that day. And he said, okay, one by one, come and give me your fee checks. And my name starts with a P. So I was in the middle of, the alphabetical number. And he kept going one by one, and he kept asking everyone to give their fee checks, and everyone would go. He wouldn't even look up. He would just, put it in his hand and go next, 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 next. And he called out my name, and thankfully I had not forgotten to take my check. I went to him, I took my check, and he stopped. And 45 of us suddenly noticed that this guy's not saying the next name, and he looked up and he said, "Who gave this check?" And I said, "I did." And I thought that there's something wrong with it. There's something that, maybe the amount is wrong, and, there's something that's, off. And he said, "This is just really nice handwriting." And, he just pointed that out. And of course, my dad had written that check. And, for me that day, I just realized that, something so, something that he was doing in his routine day in, day out, he won't really notice, but just letter forms could do that. It made him stop, it made him smile, and he looked up and he just complimented something. So I don't know why that story speaks to me so much. It just speaks to me because what, just letter forms could do. And this is that check which I'm talking about. So my dad would meticulously write, this whole check. And of course, I made him write this a couple of days back. I don't have that check from, I don't know, 12, 13 years back. But it's the same feel. I know that because I remember it. And at that point of time, when the teacher actually, asked me, and that day I just went on ahead. I didn't notice and think about, oh wow, I just thought that okay, it's a compliment. I went home. I told my dad, this is someone complimented your handwriting. But today, I look back and I just realized that was such a powerful moment because just pure, beautiful letter forms could evoke such an emotion in someone. And I still look at this, I look at the details and I think about, my dad always says that, spend 30, 45 seconds more and craft it rather than write it. And that's what I realized. He was not just handwriting, he was crafting letter forms. And that's what, really, really is so interesting. I mean, there's a sense of ligatures and there's a sense of, ascenders and descenders, just craft and quality that has been there that really, really now I notice and I feel like, yeah, that was so powerful back then as well. So this very story, this idea of this feature was, just revisiting the past and thinking about what, narratives and what storytelling really, can evoke such a powerful, emotion and stay with you for so long. So yeah, I think like I touched upon before, just like the story of this fee check, there are other many instances and other many objects or artifacts that I rummage through and try to pull out because really this talk is about looking back and the power of looking back into the past and looking back at something that can really, really, bring back not emotions, but today you start looking at things from a new perspective. So you don't look back at things, just for the memory's sake, but you start observing it from a fresh mind, from a fresh look. And I think that's also the essence of this talk. So yeah, let's go back even more. This is, I try to really put myself in my dad's shoes as a child. And my father's from this town called Bareilly, which is in Uttar Pradesh, which is a state north of India. And he was born and brought up there. He did his schooling there, and we used to live in a joint family. He used to have a big house there. And, again, I was trying to think about Bareilly and this space from the lens of typography. And this very image, I'll talk about it a little more, but is actually from these documents. And, I think about it, he had these publications with him. I'll tell you a little bit more about it later, but just imagine these really nicely crafted letterpress imprints at the back of these publications. This was the kind of visual influences that he was imbibing and taking in on a daily basis. And that's, again, so powerful. This was what he was, being born and brought up with, what he was actually seeing every day. These documents are actually his report cards from school, which are basically, small diary of sorts where your marks and your, assessments done from your teachers, and you keep it for you, for your parents to see, and so on and so forth. And even this report card, when I saw it today, when I finally revisited it again, from a designer's perspective, has so much interesting craft and detail that you would not see otherwise. And that's why looking back is so important. I mean, now I look at it again, it's completely letterpress. You can still see that impression that, the metal type has been impressed properly. There is a sense of, depth in it. There's reverse contrast, the font, the 3135 on the top right is a reverse contrast font. There's such a nice pairing between the Devanagari and the condensed sort of decorative serif. And each of them must be meticulously placed and done and made. And really just looking at it from a fresh perspective, there's so much to learn from, there's so much to gauge from it. And I think everyone has these stories with them. It's just a matter about looking at it again. And I think that again, it's so interesting, and that's a really nice space to be in. And yeah, this is also a very interesting sort of document that my dad had. So this is, I think, my first introduction to my dad's creative side, I would say, my father's creative side. He would maintain this notepad, and this was when he was 10 years old, so long time back. And he would, handcraft his name, and he would cut out these small stickers. These stickers, not these stickers, but they were these illustrations that would be in Sputnik magazine from Russia, which they would find at school. So he would do this. He created these whole pads, like customized letterheads for himself. I think this was one of his first sort of creative influences. So I probably learned that he had a natural knack of making small things. And it's just, again, something so interesting to revisit, after all these years, to just have a look and see, where it all started and where he came from. So I would say, like, he just had a natural knack, and he wanted to do and make. And I think this is a nice space to start, even though I think the typography really started building on from here, not yet. So this is a photo of Kumar Motors, which is a dealership. My grandfather and his uncle, they started in Bareilly, where my dad was born and brought up. And back in the times, I'm talking about the 1970s, there was not enough formal training or education for design or calligraphy in India. There were just a handful of colleges. And also, coming from Bareilly, which is a more smallish town in Uttar Pradesh, my father didn't have that option. So he finished his schooling, and almost like, the careers laid out for you, where he knew that he will join the family business into, business, becoming a businessman. So after his 10th, he went to Delhi, he finished his education, he went to college, and he got into the family business. So, anyone would say, okay, he had a passion, he had a hobby to, make letter forms or craft something, and he left it there. But, what I feel is so important is, even though he knew that his business aspect and his job would be in this very environment, I feel like he had another idea of how to take it forward. And really, like, you can either just leave it and let it go. You can say, okay, I had that hobby, I had that passion. Or you can really adapt, right? You can adapt and say, how can I implement it? How can I make it, a part of my everyday? How can I apply it? How can I apply all these skills I've learned? How can I, probably share it with people? How can I even, distribute it? I don't know, but he had this idea that, okay, even though I will not be able to do this professionally, there are ways I can implement it. And now I'll try and show you what I mean when he's trying to adapt. So this is a telephone directory that my dad still owns. He still writes down numbers with a sharp pencil in this, and he maintains it to this very day. And this is what I mean when I say adapt. Like, he is still taking down numbers. These are probably official numbers for his office work, for clients and whatnot. But there is such a sense of detail and craft that is, you kind of overlook at times. But now when I relook, I think it just is so interesting. It's such a nice space to be in. There's such a nice level of detail and idea of column and grid, and just the craft of letter forms. So I just took a zoomed in shot. Even with all the A's, towards the end, there's a little bit of flair suddenly. There's a sense of lists, and there's a sense of spacing. There's a sense of, so such a control over how to compose and make it look good. So I think this very telephone directory still today, when I open it and just have a look at it, it's really small type, but everything is so legible and so well crafted that I think every spread is like an artwork in a way. So yeah, this is how he was adapting, on a daily basis, and maintaining his passion, and just practicing it day in, day out. This is what I mean, right? Like, these are his notes, which might seem very boring to any of us. This is what he meant. He runs a factory, right, where they are manufacturing auto spare parts, and these are his daily notes. Like, even till date, he does these, where he writes and he talks about what he wants to do, but he enjoys it. He enjoys making these notes and understanding what needs to be done, day in, day out. Even if it, is a boring task, but he enjoys writing and still continuing that affinity towards letter forms, because I think that just brings so much life into, whatever he does on a daily basis. I mean, look at that B, right? It's got so much flair. I don't even know whether that would be legible, but even those G's, they have so much life into it. So I don't know if this was happening consciously, subconsciously, but there was such an enormous amount of expression in whatever he wrote on a daily basis that, it is so inspiring in a way. I mean, those Z's or Z's, how we say it, is like fancy. They're dancing. I don't know how else to put it. It's just got so much character. And he started, writing ligatures. Like there's an AR ligature, which ligature is probably something I don't even know he knows what exactly it is. But there was just a knack of pushing and understanding and really expressing yourself, which is so interesting. So I think, yeah, he was adapting and applying all these, his own self-learned understanding of letter forms on everyday basis. He's doing it year after year after year after year. And then, I came along in 1992. This photo is from 93, probably. I was here a year and a half. And, he was doing, his daily office. And then now, with me there, he was just seeing how he could also share that knowledge of typography. So this photos from years back. And, it's just, if I go chronologically, it just matters because I think that's when he started doing and applying his, understanding with me as well. So more report cards, because this is very interesting. So I shared my father's report cards initially, and now these are mine. And this is when I was quite young as well. So now my father's written for me. So that's what I mean by shared. Like, you apply, you adapt, and you share. And now he started writing and expressing his way in my own report cards. So whenever I used to see this, as a child, I would say, okay, wow, there's such really nice, well-crafted letter forms. And even the one on the right, it's just me getting some certificate, but he wanted to write it in a way that makes it special. And at that point of time, you just feel like, yeah, but today I feel like that certificate just means so much more in some way. So I think what happened with me coming in is like he wanted to express and share, and also wanted me to in some way sort of know that yes, these things matter and these things can make things look special as well. So there was a sense of responsibility and understanding that I might want to carry it on. And then I went to school and I started giving my tests and exams, and trying to get through school as well, and handwriting a lot more. And I would come back with my tests, and sometimes they were good, sometimes they were bad. And my mom would concentrate on telling me, you have to do well, you need to do this. But my father would say, what kind of G's are you drawing? There was a sense of telling me that no, those G's aren't good, those S's aren't good. What's happening? What's happening between the letter forms? And yeah, some things are really wacky here, I have to say. But it's such a interesting thing to have, because you come back with your test and they're like, okay, yeah, you didn't score well, but your G is really bad as well. So I was always born and brought up with that kind of an eye as well. And I do think that some of these letter forms are completely wacky. I don't know what and how I was thinking of writing. So many loops, and yeah, I have no idea how I was drawing a W or a V. There is some really interesting. And don't miss out that little divider, the spiky divider. It might hurt someone. But yeah, again, like just another example of how I was doing it, how I was writing and getting criticized for how to make things more legible, because I feel like he constantly, even till date, says your S's aren't there yet and it's not legible. And I think that's also something that I was born in that environment where something like handwriting and letter forms was very, very important. Yeah, even here, I think the Excite is quite fascinating, and it's really interesting to revisit my own handwriting and understand that I'm just actually building a career with typography. But again, it's fun to revisit and see where it came from. So luckily, I didn't take those exam papers to my design college or for the interview, and I was fortunate enough to join the National Institute of Design, which is in Ahmedabad, which is one of the leading colleges of design in India. And I was fortunate enough to also, study graphic design, and which, of course, has typography as its core subject, and it kind of makes typography makes graphic design so special and unique. And that's what I sort of really pushed ahead myself. I never had any formal training in calligraphy, not even at the design. We just had a week-long schedule, and it's more about what you learn and do yourself and take in. But I think NID, the college, really gave me that space to explore and really had that freedom to express yourself, and that's what's more important. So I did my BFA from the National Institute of Design, and then I also had the good fortune to pursue an MFA from Baltimore in graphic design. So really pushing my boundaries to learn more and more about graphic design. So I feel like I have a very strong hold about for it, and also be able to express myself in different ways. So I think both of those experiences had their own charm, and both of them gave me a very interesting space to explore and build upon my portfolio. So yeah, I was talking to Paul, and we were talking about sharing commercial work or not or whatever. But for me, this is what I'll talk about. That this is basically the timeline for my design career of sorts. I think it's well balanced between education and work experience. So I have interned at Turmeric Design, co-design, worked there as a senior designer as well. I finished my MFA at MICA, and then interned with Abbott Miller at Pentagram, and now I'm at Landor as a senior designer. And yeah, I've done a breadth of different projects related to typography with fonts and so on and so forth. But all this while, I feel like what was more important was where all those influences were coming from, and that's what I want to touch about. Because I think seeing commercial work and talking about projects is something that probably can happen with a different time or a different topic. But for me today, what was more important was to show where I come from and what is more important to me and my influences. So yeah, I think remember my dad's note making. I think I kind of took that upon myself to really use every spread, everything I wrote as a canvas. And what I mean by that is it became that opportunity for me to explore. When I opened these notebooks, I wanted every page to be interesting, and it became like this sort of opportunity for me to practice. And I feel like that's what I want to talk about. That throughout this time, from NID to Landor, whenever anyone was taking notes, whenever I was taking notes, I was really trying to think of my notebook as a canvas and use that time to practice, because all these different things that I was doing was really building upon how I was able to push my practice further and my personal practice further. So yeah, like just thinking about composition as well, just thinking about a little bit of illustration as well, because I feel like I'm sorry, I think there's a question. Okay, I can answer that later.
We'll get to that later, Pragun.
Okay. Sorry, I think I just have to shut this. Yeah, all good. Cool. So yeah, coming back to some of these things, and yeah, I was drawing a bit in it as well. I think that's one thing I'm better than my dad. I think he would accept as well. But I think I was looking at each spread as each sort of thing I was making as an opportunity to practice, and I was trying different mediums and different tools. And I think this is where I was really trying to understand and learn myself, because again, like we didn't have any formal training in calligraphy. We just had access to maybe tools, more tools, and maybe we had access to an idea of how letterform should be drawn, but that was enough. And yeah, just kind of keep doing it, on and on again, like just keep writing A to Z, just keep pushing yourself. And it just came to me. It didn't feel like a task. Like I just wanted to keep on it, just keep the hand moving. And I think that was what I was doing with all my sketches, just trying different styles and expressions, different weights, different sort of, I don't know, different mediums, nibs. And it just became a place to practice, but also write and understand what's going on. And yeah, sometimes, we also start thinking about a little more about, grids and graphic design and general layouting and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to share this, that I was pulling out all these different influences and kind of applying it in a way that, you won't really, it becomes such an easy way to think about it. So yeah, I think throughout that time I was practicing a lot, and throughout that time I was just expressing myself a lot, and I was just making all these notes, all these letter forms, filling in notebooks. I remember I used to come back. I a diehard sort of soccer fan, and I would keep watching matches and keep filling notebooks with the commentary, because it was just so therapeutic to me. And because I was making so much, I realized that, there's this sense of quantity to quality that was happening with my own personal work. And this is probably my design sort of mantra, that I keep making and keep crafting, and that really influences and pushes me to make better and craft better, and try different things again. So I think this is probably one of those things that I follow till date, and I'll try and show you what I mean by that later on as well. So coming back, and now I will show you sort of what I do today as a personal practice and how I've reached that. So this GIF, whatever you want to call it, it's a compilation of 100 images from the last 6-7 years of different styles I've explored, different mediums, different tools, different techniques, different expressions, many things I've done over the years. And I wouldn't say these are 100 best images, and they're probably way more. I just wanted to sort of show you the spectrum of different styles that I've done. When I was choosing, images for this, I was not looking at, what was best or what was appreciated more or whatever, but more about things that are just raw and honest and humble. And this daily practice of mine, probably influenced by Instagram, because I think it becomes toxic at times, but sometimes it just pushes you to make. And excuse me, I think this very thing is what drives my practice today, personal practice today. Just making and trying and pushing yourself to not be content with what you make, and really trying to see how you can express yourself more and more and more. So, and one other thing that was happening with this personal sort of practice was that I could just call it my own, which is so difficult sometimes in the design, circle. It is difficult sometimes because things take time. There's a lot of collaboration. But if my personal practice is my own, it just gave me that sense of comfort, that sense of confidence that really speaks to me, and it makes me feel sort of special in a way. So this is probably just not all of it either. It's just a bunch of things that I selected for you guys to see the breadth of images. And I my process is pretty simple. I just don't think as much. It's more about the quantity leading to quality. That being said, I think a lot of those images have certain so there's some common aspects, and the common visual aspects that are there. And one of the things that I'm constantly trying is that I'm trying to make meaning out of what I draw. I feel I'm not content with just writing the word caramel with some, simple medium. I want that word caramel to feel like caramel. I want that crisp crust to feel like something's been crispy. Sugar to feel like it's sugar. Honey to feel like, it's just been smeared. And slurp also, right? You just ate something. So what I was doing I would say from a design perspective, was to try and just meaning making, trying to push myself so that the word also speaks to you, and it's just not a written word. Rather, it's emoting something, and it's speaking to you in a way that is special. So I think that is something that I'm trying to build on and still continue to do that I just don't want to write. I want to build from that. And yeah, again, like I said, sometimes it's not the word, it's the expression. So when I think about the word sizzle, I would want it to actually almost sizzle. So I used a brush, and I used like a slightly viscous ink, and I put salt on it. And what salt does, it stays and it kind of evaporates the ink and creates this very interesting sort of texture. So again, pushing myself to try different mediums, to try different styles, and just like, I don't know, ingredients like salt, and also, but also letting the medium the tool you're using, it's a simple brush, to guide you, the pace of it, all these things kind of let you express better. Because when I think of a word like wildfire, I would want it to express something that's almost burnt, or Russia to feel that hectic, or even these risk and waves and rebels, it needs to emote that. And I think that's a style that became quite unique to me in a way, and I wanted to build on further. And sometimes, like I said, these are probably done sometimes with the same brush itself, but it's just the pace of it. So I realized how important pace is when you're writing and when you're crafting things, or the angle of it. When you have a unique angle or you have a unique pace, whatever you do has such a different expression. Because at one point you can have a slightly controlled pace, and then this can really change it all up, right? So, even if you're using the bottom left and the top left is actually done with a ruling pen. So it has a different character, but the pace is so important with the ruling pen. And the rest of it is just, trying out with different angles and, how fast you do it. So I think that's so important as well. When you think about typography, you think about calligraphy, pace and angle, these are like fundamentals. And also again the medium is everything, right? So sometimes it matters that what how flat the surface is, or what are you actually using. So these are all made by foams and sponges, and they're all, I understood that a foam, if you drag it on a piece of paper, the way it would drag on would create a path. What I mean by a path is there would be lines of white and black, and there'll be areas of white and black. So I understood that medium well, and I understood what it's going to do. So I wanted to build that as well, build it forward. So yeah, this is probably a video that kind of showcases what I mean, what a foam brush can do. So these are done with an industrial sponge. I was at the Maryland College of Art back then, and this was actually a part of my thesis project where I organized and designed my own design festival. And these big letter forms were a part of the identity. And really, what I was trying to reflect was the journeys and the sort of path that all these designers took. So I was trying to really think about, how can you reflect all these journeys that these designers have taken? Who were my speakers? And I thought that, just a simple tool like a sponge, or like just like something like an industrial sponge can do that, because every letter form was being crafted, was being written, and I think it was doing a really interesting, it was creating a very interesting sort of effect. And I created the whole typeface, crafting all these letters with sponge and kind of reflecting this almost like arduous path that these journeys that have gone through. And it's not a clean space. It shows effort, and it shows this grind that everyone went through. Whoever was speaking, and they were talking about their influences and this thing. So I think there's something more about just writing it with a sponge. There was a little bit of meaning there as well. And yeah, like again, quantity to quality. These are contextual alternates. So when you're writing more and you're creating more, sometimes you have this really interesting space where you create two S's which have their own unique character and can be used in a word, and still make it more sort of evoking, because they're two different S's or a different N, in terms of structure. I would call these contextual alternates in typography, and they have a very, they also have an interesting sort of aesthetic. And again, like I would say I'm a sucker for analog mediums, right? And the spray paint is something that's associated with vandalism or a very strong political statement of sorts. And I wanted to challenge that and make it into a space where you just celebrate the stencil, the idea of breaking a letter form, of breaking something and creating something super layered or interesting. Also explore Devanagari with stencil, which is not as common as you would want. So again, just using the idea of different styles and mediums and applying it in my own way. And I guess this is the medium, like a simple brush pen, which where it all started. I think my mom had gone to Japan, and they had she had got these brush pens for me, and I didn't know how to use them. I'm talking about 2012, so probably 8 odd years back. And I don't mean to say that there was not any access to learn brush calligraphy or brush lettering, but probably it wasn't there as much online. There wasn't, Instagram was just coming up, I believe. So I just asked a senior of mine how to go about it. And he said, listen, a brush is something you put on paper, and when you press it harder, it creates a thick impression. And when the tip is there, it creates a thin impression. That's it. That was my fundamental understanding, that thick and thin, creating contrast, is the basis of any kind of calligraphy. And, just the angle and the consistency is what really makes it special. So just with that knowledge of thick and thin, I think you can really build on and keep crafting. And that's what I did over these years, and try to really sort of take that forward in many, many other things many other styles that I've done. And yeah, my mom is a home baker. She makes cakes for different clients, and she's been doing this for 15 odd years. So I'm constantly surrounded by different ingredients in the house, and I feel like I wanted to do justice to that as well. So creating an expression from mint that's refreshing, orange is citrusy, butter is almost slippery. almond is kind of nutty, nutmeg is that raw texture, and yeah, donuts needs to be slightly thick and fat. So I was doing these small quick things as well, trying to just express myself in whatever way I wanted to, but also be influenced by whatever's happening around you. So I think those subconsciously also effect of how you and what you make. And yeah, this is another different space that I've explored, which is called type textures. I went for a calligraphy camp in Pune, and this bottom right image is what I made there. So in that camp, I was the only designer, and I was surrounded by all these different artists who do calligraphy. And calligraphy as an art is very different from how I approach calligraphy. I was using calligraphy as basis to build on projects, or just do it for my own personal liking, but they were using calligraphy as art. So I went there to this camp, and I was the only designer, and I was nicely writing words like, I don't know, hot and cold, neat and messy, or whatever, just creating opposites. And one of the senior people there, she told me that why are your letter forms legible? They shouldn't be legible. We are in a space that we are challenging letter forms to not be legible. So I think it was so interesting. Being the only designer there, I'm thinking about meaning making and evoking a sense. And here I come, and they're like, no, it should just speak. It should just be expressive. Don't think so much. Make something. Let the tool guide you, and just have fun. So I did that. So that bottom right one is actually a 20-foot canvas. I think I stood on it and made it. And I remember starting off. You can see the A and B. Right here. Just on the top, you can see the A and B. And my friend, he was like, no, it's still legible. You have to make it just as an expression. So I think it was super interesting for me to be in this space where, you're not thinking about so much meaning, but you're just thinking about the expression. And yeah, this is probably one of my sort of latest works, in the sense that I was, I'm just thinking about everyone's doing three-dimensional design. People are using softwares like Cinema 4D to create some beautiful, beautiful things. And when I was in Baltimore, I was doing that as well. I was, I learned Cinema 4D, and I played with it as much as I could. And I have tremendous respect for 3D designers. The control they have over physics and lighting and so on. It's just absolutely brilliant. And but I was in the space that I was like, okay, let's push analog mediums so that they start looking three-dimensional. So all these experiments are all 2D, right? They're done with foil, clay, um, plastic, warped paper, things like that. And I feel like it's such a nice space to explore, and this is what I want to push further. That how can analog work have the same look and feel like a 3D software, or maybe something even more. But this is what's most of my recent work, and I really want to push this forward in different ways. And yeah, thinking about digital tools and things you learn in colleges, and when you're work experience, when you're working in different environments, you sometimes use your sketch as basis. Ignore the Bezier handles here; they're absolutely horrible. But what I wanted to show is that sometimes when you understand digital tools and mediums, you can build something from a simple sketch into a more three-dimensional sort of artwork, where you are using the idea of your sketch but applying a really nice effect on it. So I think there's a nice sort of balance between hand done and digital here. And I kept doing that, even with a really raw sketch, but kind of taking it forward to, have this really 3D yet controlled space where, again, it feels like someone's written, but it's actually embellished because of a 3D effect. And here as well. So you kind of just start seeing how a simple sketch can start looking so much more sort of dynamic. And yeah, even here I was saying that, okay, even with something like a busy bee or something, I was not just putting yellow and black color, but I was trying to show the motion as well, right? So I was thinking of the bee and thinking about just that annoying way would move around, just to sort of build that as well. So I think that meaning making kept coming in, whatever and however I could push that. Yeah, this is another one as well. I was not content with the one on the left. I thought it should sprinkle more. So using that same effect, which is called the blend tool, it really adds depth and value, depth and sort of space into it, so making it almost three-dimensional. So yeah, I think this is more of my recent work, where I feel like it's still like a mix between digital and analog, because truly I'm still writing and making things that are crafted by my own self, but putting it in this digital space so that it becomes more powerful. And yeah, this is again an example where I was just tired of making notes, and I kept over swashing it to a space where nothing was legible. But this very note taking inspired me to make this, which I think is something that I really enjoyed making. It was during the lockdown, and I was stuck in Hamburg, away from my family for a long time, probably 8 odd months, just stuck in a house. And I realized there's a lot of self time that time. So I kept adding these, words with self, and kept doing this every day. Probably worked on this for 2 weeks, every day, just a little bit, just to add on to it, because it was really meditative, almost therapeutic for me, just to sort of keep doing this, because really I was feeling a lot of this, and I thought that this is an interesting piece to have. So yeah, I think all these different styles, mediums, projects that I didn't even show any of the commercial ones, but I think my personal work was something that really guides my commercial work as well. So I think that's what was more important to me. And after all these times, all this learning, putting it on whatever social media, my father would always see it and he would like it. And yeah, I think I came back to Delhi and I noticed that now the tables have turned, because now I've become a mentor to my own father. So what he was doing consciously while I was making all those different explorations was that he was doing it himself. Whether it's with Devanagari, whether he's writing, a birthday wish to someone in the family, or he was, writing something on his own, just positive messages, but his own words. So that was also very important. I think he's a good writer as well, and I think it's important to have that as a calligrapher as well. And he was trying different styles. I think probably because I was doing that also, he wanted to push himself. So I got him these pens, and I think he's really pushing himself and trying different things, which are really interesting and really expressing. I think this one on the left, it's Devanagari, but it has such an interesting flow to it, and it's more like a poem where it's flowing into one to the other. And the one on the right is a really expressive way. That word actually means hope. I think, if I'm translating it right. So he was just doing his own thing and expressing himself in his own unique way, but probably, whether he accepts it or not, probably influenced by my sense of exploration. So I think that's why I said the tables have turned, and I'm able to help, sort of guide him as well. So yeah, I think he was just pushing himself, and it was so nice to see this. Most of this stuff he did during the lockdown because he had more time and space. And I remember my mom telling me that he's almost addictive now, and I was more than happy about it. So sometimes what happens is, once you get back into the space, you almost sort of collaborate. So the gif on the left is my father's, and the one on the right is mine. And we, all of us, as typography enthusiasts, we know about 36 days of type, which is basically 36 days. We each draw a letter form, one unique letter form each day. And I think I nudged my dad to do that as well. And on the right, I have done a bit, every year. So I think finally we did same project together. I wouldn't have ever thought of that, and I was so happy that I could guide him to do this together, and we both were working on the same thing. So it was just a really nice way to complete the story, because we're finally even doing the same kind of projects. So this was his take on it, which is more, I would say, meaningful, and he would add more ideas into it, more sort of thoughtful writing as well. And I think I would just enjoy the texture of it. I would just think of, again, the J for jam, or electric E, or whatever. Like, I would enjoy that textural, sort of visceral aspect of letter forms and textures. So I think we both had our own take on it, but to be in this space where we both had explored simultaneously was super, super, it made me really happy. And yeah, I think, talking about collaboration and talking about, living in a house and sort of having all these different influences, you also have to really, sort of, be humble, be honest, and enjoy the small things. You enjoy whatever, wherever you can, and just sort of take in every day, day out, and enjoy those small things. And the way me and my father would do it, I will show you, is, so like I told you, my mom's a home baker, and she bakes these wonderful cakes for clients. And sometimes those clients have messages where they want to write a happy birthday or whatever. So that's what we would do. The one on the left is written by my dad, and he would hand make that whole thing, and then the one on the right on the sugar disc is made by me. So I think what was happening is parallelly we were also collaborating for my mom. So this is what I mean when I say enjoy the small things, because you don't you get these chances, and you want to build on from that. And I think making something as simple as that, special. And my mom would have clients who would say, no, we want a nice calligraphic sort of thing. So she would get that kind of feedback. Again, it kind of tells you that letter forms do matter, and craft does matter in that way. So yeah, he did these ones on the left, and I did these probably 100 boxes with Merry Christmas for my mom's bulk plum cake order, I think. So I think it's a nice space to be in, where we're actually collaborating and helping my mom, and her clients seem to be happy with it. So yeah, I think I would sort of I just checked the time, but I would try and end this talk soon. But for me, looking back is just not a one-way street. For me, looking back is looking forward, right? And that's how I reiterate it. And I really think that's what for me happened when I was preparing for this talk. When I chose this title, I was curious what I'm going to say, but each time I revisited any story, or each time I looked at anything that my dad had worked on and what I had done, I just felt like it's so much more powerful today just to have a fresh perspective, to revisit. And this is what I'll sort of leave on. Like, looking back for me is looking forward, and there's so much merit as a designer to do that, because we are in this rut of making futuristic things and looking in the future. But this sort of humble outlook is also so much more important. And just taking that forward, all these divider slides I made in the morning, all these quick things. And this is how I work. I just keep making quick things and doing it in a way where, you, again, quantity to quality, and just sort of enjoying that process. So, I just wanted to show you that this is really just keep making and enjoying. And I think that's what I really think is how I sort of take my practice forward and go ahead. So yeah, this is me and my dad today. I just took this photo 1 hour back, as recent as it could be, and yeah, I would wrap up with that. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and yeah, happy to discuss, take any questions or whatever you want.
Great. Thank you so much, Pragun. Wonderful talk. Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Perfect end to our season today. So we have a few questions from the audience, and hopefully
Yeah.
other people will type their questions on the Q&A. Have you thought about plans of digitizing your dad's hand lettering?
Yeah, why not? I mean, personally, I'm not an expert in font making. I have made fonts, so but yeah, maybe something that to consider. So definitely something that I could think about and see, because he has one consistent sort of handwriting that he does on a daily basis. So I think I would take that as a really good idea rather than a plan that I already had.
Okay. So just bigger picture for a second. How much of your craft, or sort of like, has been influenced by where you grew up, seeing things in India as opposed to, like, let's say, you've been to Baltimore, and what you saw in Baltimore? How does that influence what type of typography, lettering you were experimenting with?
That's a really nice question. And I think for me, India has inspired me mostly more than, the style is with the sort of material aspect. Like, when you go out, you sort of have this grunge and the streets, and you even the food, it's messy and greasy in a way. Why I'm mentioning all these things is I think that all those things subconsciously inspire how and what I work with, because I don't think that my work is defined by a style, but it's defined more by mediums. And I think in India, you just see so much more of that. You just see everything being so raw, and I think that's what really drives my work. So I completely agree with you. India, more than any other thing, has inspired me, and it continues to do that, because I think every time I come back, I just notice something more, something different, and I'm never surprised.
And have you reached out to, like, I know you went to that calligraphy boot camp of sorts in Pune, but have you reached out to, like, local artisans, craftspeople in India to like learn more about what they do and what they, and why they do it?
I mean, not really. We would do things like that during our college, but from a personal perspective, no, I have not reached out to local craftsmen as much. There's a lot of documentation happening in India, especially about something called truck art, which is very unique to India, which is done on the trucks, and there's a lot of documentation done on that. But I feel like how I approach typography is quite different from that. I really try and just have a unique space to be in. So I believe that local craftsmen won't really understand how I work, because their perspective is really built on craft. Their perspective is built on what's right and wrong. There's a style to make a Devanagari font, and if someone breaks it, I don't know, I'll be appreciated. But at the same time, I feel it's an opportunity to really see how both those aspects can marry and make something interesting. So again, I would take it as a welcome suggestion.
Okay. You have a couple of questions from one of our attendees, Disha Grawal. Are these, and I know you've covered some of this in your talk, but are these experiments all done by hand and then digitized, or are these done using software, different softwares?
So like if I probably show something like, let's say something like, yeah, like, something like this, or something like this. So yeah, absolutely right. These are all done by hand. There's very little digitization. There's just, probably using something as simple as Photoshop to treat the colors, or to sort of give that contrast, or to flip the colors, something as simple as that. But the real essence is all sort of from paper. I just scan it and I play around with the colors digitally. But yeah, it's all done by hand, to answer your question. But in this kind of a space, even these are all done, these are all analog experiments, nothing's digital really. But in this kind of a space, I think there's a clear translation where you draw something, or you sketch something, and then completely relook at it from a digital perspective. So I think this is much closer to digital, but all these are more, I would say, hand done and just treated on Photoshop or something.
Okay, and so we have a couple of questions that overlap. So what's the best way of digitizing hand-done artwork? Scanning or fixing it in Illustrator, or do you have a better recommendation?
You mean like digitizing like this kind of stuff?
Yeah, your hand-done lettering.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like I said, these are horrible Beziers. The idea was not to sort of make it correct, but to have this expression. But to answer your question, I would say a scan or even a simple photo till it's flat. I think flatness is important. And even if it's not flat, you have to make sure when it's on Photoshop that it's completely, flat and intended like you drew it. So I think the intention should be there when you start digitizing, because you don't want to lose that, Of course, I took some freedom here. I felt like some of those swashes and loops would look better in that way or whatever. But I feel like scanning or just a simple photo with a flat angle, and then just building it on from there, not to overthink too much, because a lot does change when you start digitizing, and you want the essence of the sketch. You don't really want the sketch. So that's how I do it.
Okay. Do you have a routine when you start with an idea? Do you like start with your notebook first and then find the right tool, or like do you have like a MO, like a modus operandi for making?
I honestly, my only design process is not to think much. Really, just go just make some stuff. Like really, like when I come back from work, everyone has their own job, and you come back, you want to unwind. You sit with paper, and it comes intuitively to me. Like when I think of this kind of a series, yes, maybe there was these ingredients I've been seeing in the house or something like that. But when it comes to these kind of expressions, I'm just really trying to think about what to make, just to make, whatever. I really struggle with understanding what to write, but that's secondary for me. I know I want to write, so I really don't overthink. I just make and go with that flow. So yeah, unfortunately, not a very thorough design process, but the idea is just to making. I think making makes it worthwhile for me.
So you have a bunch of fans out there. Justin Epstein says your work is gorgeous. And Gabriella from the One Club says you have a very steady pulse in order to write so beautifully in one take.
Thank you so much.
So we will share these comments with you on chat, and we'll share the recording with you once it's been processed.
That'll be lovely.
Yeah. So thank you again, Pragun. Thank you for attending our final TDC virtual salon this afternoon, and we hope to see you in the new year when we come back with our jury talks in January. So see you soon.
Awesome. Yeah.
Oh, any final words, Pragun, before?
Oh, nothing. I mean, again, thank you for the opportunity. Just for me to sort of put it together. I think I learned a lot. While preparing for this talk, I learned a lot about my own family and my own father. So I would thank you that this just opportunity and this sort of freedom to talk about what you want allows you to do that. And I would just say, yeah, for me, my personal practice and means a lot to me. And I think everyone should have that space. And I always nudge whoever comes to me for any kind of advice to just have that outlet. And I would urge everyone to have that, and that really helps me.
Great. Thanks for those final words. Thank you all, and hope to see you in January 2021. Have a great holiday and Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you so much.